Welcome to the Construction Pals podcast, brought to you by Blue Tape, your source for the latest in the construction world. Hard hats off, headphones on, and let's get started.
And I'm your host, Rick Butler from Blue Tape. In today's episode, we're talking with Mr. R.C. Hand, a plasterer by trade who spent 48 years in the construction industry. Welcome to the podcast, R.C.
Thank you, Rick.
Yeah, man, absolutely. 48 years, man. That's longer than most folks that are probably listening and been on the earth. So tell me where let's before we even get into that, tell me where you are. Tell me a little bit about family, wife, dog, kids. Where are you sitting right now, man?
I'm in my home office in my little condo in Huntington Beach, California. I live in a small craft harbor with sailboats and yachts in my backyard. And I'm across the street from the Pacific Ocean, just 10 miles south of Long Beach.
Wow. So that could be a goal. If other people stay in this business for 48 years, they might get to be able to rest and relax in a Huntington Beach like that. So tell me where did all the labor, where did all the hard work, where did all the sweat start and take place to get eventually to where you are now, man?
Well, my father was a plasterer, and when his job at Disneyland finished, when they built Disneyland, he was in the Lathers Union, and he saw the end of that job coming, and he went out to freelance and started a little plastering business. And after the war, he plastered track housing and traveled through California from San Diego up to San Francisco, lathing and plastering houses, and ended up doing Disneyland, and then decided to do something on his own. He went to a Polytechnic high school, so I guess they taught him some trades there. And his brothers, he had 7 brothers and 7 sisters, so they didn't have a lot of money. So they built their parents' house for them. They had to learn these things by necessity. And I went to work with him when I was 6, 8, 10 years old. I would go with him on the weekends and watch him and help him do things. And when I graduated high school at 18, I went to work for him for 10 years full time while I went to college at night. And he retired when I was 28, and I took over the business.
Now let's level set on something. Disneyland is the Disney in Pasadena or Anaheim. Which one is it? Anaheim. Anaheim. So we're not talking Orlando. And about what year was that he saw that coming to completion and him starting out on his own? Give me a
I think they ended in 54.
Okay.
So I think they ended in 54, and he went to plaster a vacant restaurant, and he took over the lease on that restaurant, and we ran that operation for 10 years. And in the lean times, he would start up his plastering business and go out and make real cash to keep the restaurant afloat.
Wow. Well, that's a job and a career all in itself. I don't know if I'd start out in a restaurant business. That's hard work, man.
It's one of the toughest ones there are.
Oh my gosh. So you joined the fray when you were literally 6 years old and started following them around and going to the sites?
Yes, and he repaired our vehicles also. So if the truck needed a new transmission, he'd put the transmission in, or, do whatever the vehicles needed. So he was not afraid to tackle those things. And he apparently, more than he enjoyed a challenge. I like things to be fairly easy through life. Obviously, not completely being a plasterer is not an easy job, but it keeps you fit. But my father was a very clever fellow, and I learned a great deal from him.
Yeah. And so let's speed up time. You were 28 when he retired, and you took over the business full time?
That's right.
Okay. So that puts us somewhere where in the 70s, late 70s?
I was 18 in 1970, so it would be 1980.
Okay. All right. I'm bad with math. Okay. So about 1980. And, still in 1980, we don't have even a scintilla of the same technologies. What were some of the hardest things that you had to overcome just taking it over?
Well, I was so fortunate to have grown up in that environment of being self-employed. I actually helped develop his book on accounts receivable and keeping track of outstanding invoices and so forth. So that was easy for me to do. And I watched him answer the phone and make calls, and I went with him on jobs and bidding jobs and so forth. So I grew up in that environment, and it was really quite natural for me. And a lot of the clients that when he retired, a lot of those clients were still middle-aged or so forth. And so I continued working for those people throughout my whole working career. I have people that were my clients that are still alive that I worked for over 40 years. And our specialty was small repair in the rental housing industry. So our jobs on average lasted or took 55 minutes to complete from beginning to finish, from beginning to end. And my father actually created a material that we used before it was available in your home building stores, so that we could do fast setting plaster and get the job done quicker, rather than doing it in 2 or 3 applications and making a small job last 3 days. We would do it in 55 minutes, and which makes it cheaper and more efficient for all parties concerned.
Wow. 54 minutes. So let's just say I'm a real estate investor, and I bought a rental, and I've deluded myself that I want to be a landlord. But this particular home I've taken over to be a landlord, before I rent it out, it's going to need some repairs. And I would call you guys in for holes in the wall, basically. Is that
exactly?
Okay?
Well, we advertise in the 3 newspapers and in a couple of specialty magazines for people that were landlords. So we directed our efforts to the multi-unit industry. So some of my clients, one of my clients was the 10th richest man in the world, had 2,000 or 3,000 apartments, and we had a part of that action and took care of those. And most of my clients were mom and pop landlords who owned a couple of houses or maybe a fourplex or something. So I had customers I'd see once a year, and some that I'd see every month, depending on how many units they had and what kind of repairs needed to be done. And we were a very niche operation because we took the small jobs where other people might think they were not lucrative. We made it so that we could do many small jobs every day and make a nice living off of several small jobs, rather than investing a lot of time and money into a big project. And at the end of the day, if you don't get paid on a big project, it really hurts. You lose your money. Our situation was, if you didn't get paid, you lost an hour of labor. Basically, the materials were negligible. So it was a very specialized industry, and we were probably the only people at that time doing it, and doing it well.
So instead of going a mile wide and being a literal jack of all trades, you guys decided to go a mile deep and specialize and market exactly to what your specialty was. What precipitated that mind change right there?
Well, we started out doing room additions, lathing and plastering outside of exterior walls on room additions. And that's a lot of hard work. And my dad was 35 when I was born. So he was a middle-aged and older gentleman while we were marching to my time taking over the business. And on those big jobs, we would work for contractors who didn't have enough capital to carry the expense of paying the people on the jobs. So you ran the risk of investing your money into the product or into the materials and your time, and then not getting paid at the end of the job. So doing a smaller job and not being involved with a general contractor, it puts you in direct contact with the owner, and they know what you've done. They see your work. They know you're completed. If they're happy, they generally pay you. So that was a much higher incidence of good results for the customer and for us, taking out that middleman and going straight to the customer.
Wow. Let's say that you're starting out. Let's stay on that tack right now, because I'm fascinated. And I think, guys that are, again, I think off air, we said, I'm 30 years old and I want to make this my life's business to put food on my family's table to the day I retire, and eventually retire in Huntington Beach. I'm breaking my back every day. I'm sweating and I'm toiling. I'm doing this now in 2023. Can that same concept be adapted today in the trades where you've cut out
absolutely.
Tell me what you would do if you're going to start out right now, 2023, with the knowledge that you've got right now. Tell me about what that guy can do that can glean off your wisdom on that.
Well, you have to do a self-evaluation of what your skills are and pick your best skill. And obviously, the most important skill is communications with your customer, because you have to convince them that you're trustworthy and capable. And luckily, at 28, I was old enough to look like I knew what I was doing. And a lot of those customers already knew me. But pick your best skill and put on your big boy pants and start an ad campaign. And of course, now you use the internet to some degree and advertise in especially magazines or newspapers. And you want to be doing something that you can project your daily costs and set your income to adjust to those costs and your needed living expenses, what your time is worth and what you need to keep a roof over your head. And if you can get those numbers to line up in such a way that you provide a service that people need, you can't help but being successful. I had an answering machine, I had a pager, and of course, when the phone became mobile phones, I had a cell phone. But normally in my day, I would come home to 18 or 20 calls on my answering machine. In the evening, I would play those through, make all my calls, do my paperwork. I never saw a TV show all the way through in all the years that I worked, because people called me at all hours of the night. Once I got home, my office was in my home, and it lowered my overhead by working out of my home. So these are the important things. Keep your overhead low, have a skill set, and then promote yourself. You have to be able to get people out there to know that you're available and that you do quality work at whatever it is you're going to decide to do.
At what point you took over the business at 28? At what age, nearabouts, did you actually get out of being the plasterer, being the laborer, and put on your white collar in this business?
Never.
Or did you ever? Never did.
Never. I ran a 2-man operation. I did all the work myself and had a helper, and I did all the labor. I did all the phone calls. I had a guy with me to mix the mud and clean up, and it was just the two of us. And that's another issue, keep your costs down. And I'm 71 years old. I play tennis every day. I play handball. This type of work keeps you fit. So I benefited from being out there and working in the field and not sitting behind the desk somewhere answering the telephone all day.
If you had to do it over again, let's go back, and we're starting in 2023. Would you still do it with you and another guy and crew and keeping it down that way? Or do you think you could expand by being in the office solely?
Well, my father did that. And his realization was that at the end of the year, you got 17 guys working for you. You make a little more money than they do in most cases. And you take risks and you take all the heat. So from his experience, he didn't think it was worth it. And I learned that from him. And again, we were in the restaurant business. We had 8 or 10 employees all the time, and they're stealing from you time or money or product. When you're on the job site with a one guy crew and your customer calls you and they're missing a piece of furniture or something's been damaged, you were there, you know what happened. And you can solve those issues much easier than if you weren't there and have to go and run your guys through the 3rd degree to find out what happened on the job site. So being there yourself eliminates those questions. You know if you bumped into a piece of furniture, you know if you dropped something on the carpet, you're right there at the scene of the crime, so to speak.
Wow, what a great perspective. I know people think, I guess there's 1 or 2 schools to be in, or 1 or 2 camps, expand and have 17 people under you, or take your tact, low overhead, and all you're really doing is answering to yourself and the guy sitting right next to you. So that's what a great perspective. Of all these years, RC, what's the best advice to hit to that you ever received that got you to this point where you feel like, hey, I'm sitting here in Huntington Beach, I've given my wife what she needs, I've fulfilled, and I'm still fulfilled by the sports you're involved and the lifestyle you lead. What's the best advice that you ever received to get to this point, man?
Well, if you keep your promises, answer your phone, and call your customers back, you can't help but be a success, because most people don't do that. I would have people call me and I would talk to them the first time on the phone. They say, I called 5 people. You're the only person that called me back. Every one of those phone calls I made was worth $150 to me back then. And I could do 6 jobs, 7 jobs a day. So, I'm making $800 or $900 a day, less whatever my overhead was, simply by answering the phone and keeping your promises. It makes your life so much simpler. You don't have to be afraid to go to the supermarket and run into one of your customers who's mad at you for not showing up or for doing a bad job.
Let's reverse the table here. Back all these years, from 8 years old and up, what's the worst advice that you ever received?
That there were greener pastures in other work environments. Put on a suit and a tie and go out and make some money. All of my friends graduated from university with degrees in any number of things. I made more money than any of them on a regular basis. And not only made it, but you have to have a plan if you're self-employed. You have to create a retirement plan for yourself. And I did that through buying real estate. And it's not easy to plan for your retirement, but it has to be done if you want to be able to travel and live in a nice place, eat once in a while. Part of the business model is creating wealth that will take care of you when you're retired and old. And if you're lucky, you get old and get to retire. And there's nothing worse than being old and being broke. So don't work your life away and end up old and broke.
Wow. Any last thing I'm going to let you have the last word, brother.
Yes.
Say what you want to say. You got the floor, and then we'll say goodbye.
You don't do this for the money. You do it for the work. You do your work. You do it well. The money can't help but come. But don't do it for the money. Do it to serve people and serve them well.
Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe for more episodes like this. For more information on Construction Pals Podcast and Blue Tape, please visit bluetape.com.